Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. It is Thursday, October 14th, and we're here in the McCallion Office Building in downtown White Plains to begin our 2022 budget process for Westchester County. Westchester County, as many of the towns, all of the towns, and many of the cities of Westchester have calendar year fiscal years, meaning that the budget years for our government start on January 1st and expire on December 31st. And we now have the first public discussion of what the 2022 budget will be for Westchester County as we begin with today's presentation of our capital budget plan. We will go through a series of categories as to what the plan looks like. We will have some of our commissioners and senior managers address some detail in each of those different categories. And then I'm going to ask the chairman of the Board of Legislators, the Honorable Ben Boykin, to physically receive the capital budget from us in the executive branch as it then begins the process of the legislative review over the budget. Ken Jenkins, our deputy county executive, will review all of these things when we reach the end of the conference. But we want to point out that this is the beginning of the process, not the end of the process. And built into this is public input, both prior to the submission of the operating budget and then absolutely during the process of the legislative review of the budget. We hope that as the chair of the board establishes a date sometime in mid-December when the Board of Legislators will review the budget, they will review not only the capital budget that we present today, but the operating budget, which we intend to present on or about November 10th. And at that time, we'll also present special district budgets, our refuse district, the various sewer districts, and then that the totality of all of those things will be reviewed by the Board of Legislators. Amendments will be welcomed, and adjustments to the budget at the appropriate time. The board will pass whatever those amendments are as part of the budget, and then we'll come back to the executive branch to determine if there's any reason for either use of line item or overall veto, and then if a veto were to happen, there'd be an override capacity by the legislature. Generally, during these years, this is now the fourth budget that we'll be presenting as an executive administration. We've been able to have open dialogue with the legislature, productive dialogue, make amendments to the budget that satisfy the demands of the public and the expectations of the legislature without having to resort to the veto pen. And I'm reasonably confident that given the current climate of the economy and in this county, we'll be able to work through this process. But this is a public process. This is a process for you as a citizen, if you're interested, to interact with us, both in the legislative branch and the executive branch, and for those of you in the media as well, to interact with us as we go through this process. What we're going to be talking about today is the capital budget for Westchester County, and we're submitting a budget that includes both what we expect to spend in the year 2022 on physical capital improvements, and at the same time projecting ahead what our expectations are for the next 4 years that follow that. So it's a 5-year capital budget plan. Now, the second, third, fourth, and fifth years of any capital budget plan, since they're not at current year, may be adjusted from year to year, and there's a reassessment process that goes on. So we project certain things in this budget which we will not be doing in the next year, but we identify as necessary in the same way that you do in your household budget. You may have the urgency to put a new roof on your house, and you do that this year, but in a future year you're going to convert your heating system from one type of heating to another type. You can't do it the same year that you're doing the roof on your house, but you paced out how you're going to be able to afford doing that. It's the same thing with the County of Westchester. We have a variety of assets. We have a responsibility to provide a variety of programs and services, and we have to make all of that fit into a workable situation. The core issue that most people want to know when we look at a new budget year is, what will our tax rate be? We have cut property tax levy the last 2 years. We expect to do so again, but that will be embedded in the operating budget, which we will submit to the Board of Legislators, and we will present publicly in a similar forum in the month of November, as I said, on or about November 10th. And that's when that magical question gets answered. But it is the totality of capital, operating, and special district budgets that represents the budget for 2022. The capital budget is really a statement of strategic investments. This is as much about our future as our present. And although within the year, for the year, there are certain projects that we're going to tackle. It has to make sense over the sweep of time. Westchester County has tremendous assets that were here before I was born, much less before I entered public office. And facilities like Playland, the Bronx River Parkway, our park system, our sewer treatment systems, all predate this administration, and they represent the bedrock of the services that we provide. In addition, we've taken on responsibility for projects like Memorial Field, located in Mount Vernon. We've taken on aspirational issues such as the conversion of our bus fleet from diesel to hybrid electric and electric. All of those things represent allocations of money in this budget and in the future that are capital investments, again, in the same way that you make a capital investment in your home. When you make a capital investment, you don't expect, unless you have tremendous resources, to be able to finance it in full on that time. Many times people get a home improvement loan to make an improvement, add on a bedroom or expand a garage in some workable capacity. You get the money up front, you pay it out over time. It makes sense to do it that way because the money you're spending is not consumed at the time. It's an investment that increases the value of the home, and so you can afford to pay it over whatever the length of the borrowed money is. So it is with Westchester County government. When we pay for bonded actions over multiple years, it's because the action that we take has a value over those number of years. It enhances the value and protects the asset of Westchester County and makes it a more marketable situation in the years to come. It's also important to know, and again, I correlate this to your own home, you can defer capital, you can defer an improvement in any given period of time. If you see a brown spot in the ceiling of your home, you might determine that you'll wait a year because you don't have the money to fix it this year. But you know if you wait too many years, your ceiling will collapse. And the cost of repairing it at that point is much greater than if you do preventive changes as you go along. And so much of our budget proposal takes that into account when we look at roads and bridges and some of our other physical assets. This budget proposal requests $476.4 million in new appropriations on an all-funds basis for 2022. The appropriation request is broken down as follows. $291.9 million for general county purposes, $152.4 million for the sewer and water districts, $4.1 million for the refuse district, and $28 million for the airport. Over the past 4 years, we've made significant investments in our county's infrastructure. We have saved a considerable amount of money. We've improved the county's bond rating, and we have done all of this while we have cut county property taxes for our residents. We're not here to let things fall apart, and we're not here to give generic rhetoric that tries to mask what the underlying fiscal instability might be. We have made the investments that we've made, and we've done so in order to get results, and to do that for the 1 million plus people that live in Westchester County. This is our county. We intend to make it stronger for the future. And as I have stated that on the day that I was born into a Westchester County for which these assets existed. So do I have, and we all have a responsibility to generations that are being born right now in Westchester County, that these assets remain for the future. We must always treat sewage. We must always have a county jail to deal with that element that must be incarcerated. We must always have these public services, and it's foolish to think in terms of 1 year budget or a 2 year budget period to quote unquote look good when what you're doing is leaving a gap and a depth charge that will explode at a future year, that some future county executives and some future board of legislators will have to deal with in a crisis mode, which could have been anticipated and dealt with in the current time. Year to date, the county has expended over $119 million on capital improvements. The backlog of capital projects has also been reduced by $400 million since we took office in January of 2018. Over the past 3 years, we've made strides to improve the capital program and increase the efficiency of these projects. The most notable improvement came with the approval by the New York State Legislature to eliminate a $10 million bond cap, which required referendum whenever we had more than a $10 million expenditure. In the day that those were initiated, $10 million would buy you a certain amount of projects. Now with the cost of projects, that became more all-inclusive, and the ability to go to referendum to do projects such as repairing the Glen Island Bridge, which is a multi-million-dollar project, created a complicated step that made it much more difficult for us to do the necessary improvements in order to make sure that our infrastructures functioned. And we don't want to do that by playing games with our budget, breaking things up into pieces, which wind up costing us more money. I'm going to ask our budget director, Larry Sewell, to join me here. He has had the responsibility both during this administration and prior to my administration to handle the structure of the budget for the various things that we're talking about now. And I'd like Larry to comment on that. And then after that, we're going to go into specific component parts of the capital budget, and I will ask respective commissioners or senior managers to come up and amplify those topics. Our budget director, Larry Sewell.
Thank you, County Executive. So one of the important aspects of the capital program is our ability to access the capital markets. As the County Executive mentioned, we finance these projects over the useful life of the projects, whether it's 10, 20, 30 years. So it's important to have a strong credit rating so when investors buy our bonds, they know they can count on getting repaid over that period of time. So we have made great improvements or strides towards improving our credit rating. Recently, Fitch Ratings Service took off the negative outlook. We have a AA plus by S&P, Fitch, and a AA1 rating by Moody's, which is one notch below AAA, still a very strong rating. We recently, and this is really due to our performance financially. At the end of 2020, we increased our fund balance or our reserves to $220 million, our unrestricted reserves, which is our rainy day fund, so to speak. So why is this, also why is the credit rating important? Because it affects our cost to borrow funds over the long term, since we're issuing long-term bonds. So that does have a positive effect on our borrowing. So just one of the things Fitch noted in their report was they removed the negative outlook because of the fact, and I should mention that our bonds are general obligation bonds, so they're based on the full faith and credit of the county. So it's based on our overall finances. It's not based on one single revenue stream. They cited our strong underlying revenue growth potential, significant ability to implement policy decisions that would close budget gaps and maintain very high financial resilience. They further stated that the revision from negative to stable reflects their expectations that the county will maintain its improved financial resilience over time based on recent operating results that have bolstered general fund reserves. So this is all very positive. We will be going to the bond market again at the end of this year. We do one borrowing a year, essentially. And we expect to have very positive conversations with the other rating agencies as well. And I think our long-term goal and the county executive's long-term goal is to get our credit rating back to the AAA rating it was in the past. Thank you.
I want to thank Larry Sewell, our budget director, and also with us here today is Gideon Grandy, who's our assistant deputy budget director, for their management day to day. We have placed fiscal stability of this county at the very top of our list of activities. We have been able to cut county property tax levy. We've been able to provide essential services. Many times from this podium we talk about our programs to deal with domestic violence, our programs to deal with feeding people, our programs to help business. But underneath all of that is a commitment to fiscal sanity. And I say that not because of my time in public office, but because of my time in corporate America, in which I worked for subsidiaries of major corporations. Our deputy county executive, Ken Jenkins, has similar corporate background that complements his public background. And so many times people may not understand that the top management of this government are individuals that have worked inside the rigor of major corporations, and knowing that we must provide fiscal stability at the same time that we do all of the other services and sanity. So let's go into some of the topical areas that we have here. High on our list is that issue of affordable housing. As in prior years, affordable housing is again a top priority, with a combined $50 million set aside in this capital budget for land acquisition and infrastructure improvements to support the development of affordable housing within the county. If approved by the County Board of Legislators in its current format, the 2022 capital budget would represent the largest single-year commitment to affordable housing in the history of Westchester County. And it follows 2 consecutive budgets where we allocated $10 million both for acquisition of land and a separate $10 million for infrastructure grants, which are essential in trying to make sure the developments can provide affordable housing units across the county. Our Commissioner of the Department of Planning has long expertise in the area of housing, as well as the other areas that are under her responsibility. She has been our point person, along with Blanca Lopez, in helping us figure out how do we incentivize affordable housing in this county so that people who are not making top-level market rate salaries on Wall Street or in top-level law firms can still afford to live in Westchester County. So I would ask Commissioner Norma Drummond to share some thoughts about the housing portion of this capital budget. Commissioner.
Thank you, County Executive. With the housing settlement behind us, it's really important that we make clear to the development community that the county is welcoming and welcomes developers to come in and work with us to provide affordable housing. Through the housing needs assessment that was done in 2019, we've also worked with our local communities to help them understand how important it is for affordable housing to be located in each and every municipality in this county. I think we're all seeing the issue right now of getting bus drivers available. That's because we have to have affordable housing. Strong communities and the quality of life that Westchester depends on is really based on being able to provide housing for all levels of income and all levels of the job mix that needs to be out there. So the commitment to the county of the $50 million in the capital budget for affordable housing programs is far exceeds anything we've done before, but we've got development lined up. We've got developers ready to use the funds, so we're really looking forward to the ability to provide these units in the future. Thank you.
And I might add that just 2 years ago, we had a comprehensive report on affordable housing need that was contracted for and completed under the direction of Commissioner Drummond. It indicated that there was a need at that point in time for 11,000 new units of affordable housing in Westchester County to meet the need. We have been in the process of working on, in round numbers, about 2,500 units. Over the course of the last few months, you've seen us cut ribbons for a 34-unit project in Portchester, a 75-unit project in Greenburgh just a few weeks ago, the Day Spring Commons project in Yonkers, most recently ribbon cutting. There are other ones that are out there, and we are seeking to try to provide the financial incentive to make sure that more of those projects can happen. Some are under construction now, some are under development, but Norma and her team, and again, Blanca Lopez, who's on our executive team as Assistant Director of Operations, have monitored this process, and that is one of the key component parts of this capital budget. The next topical area I'd like to address is environmental conservation and transportation. We've long been committed to environmental conservation, and in the current language, we are talking about the efforts that we make to improve our environment, particularly as we face the threat of climate crisis in this country. The climate crisis issue is much bigger than any county government or local government. These are issues that have to be dealt with on the international level, on the national level, on the statewide level, but no government can avoid doing their portion or their share of what has to be done to try to deal with this. And many times, the efforts that we use to protect the environment directly correlate to our transportation system, because many times the greenhouse gases that are generated come from our transportation modes across not just the county, but across the nation. In this budget, we've earmarked $31.9 million for the purchase of electric hybrid buses for the county's B-Line bus system. This continues the process of conversion of our bus fleet from diesel to electric hybrid and electric. $4.3 million is allocated in this budget to begin the process of electrifying the county's 2 bus garages, because we have to have an electric infrastructure to service those electric hybrid electric buses. We have $1 million allocated for the installation of EV charging stations at county facilities. This is an initiative that Peter McCart will address, and $1.1 million for improvements that are tied into environmental conservation at the Hilltop Hanover Environmental Center. I'd like 2 gentlemen to join us for this presentation. We'll hear from our Commissioner of the Department of Public Works, Hugh Grecian, and also from our Director of Sustainability, Peter McCart. So, Commissioner Grecian and Mr. McCart.
Thank you, County Executive. Yeah, good morning. I'd just like to point out a few highlights in the 2022 budget. As the county exec mentioned, the environment is key to us. What we're proposing on the construction side this year, we'll cover that first, is we're going to date, we've already had $120 million spent in construction. We're getting in bids every week. We're advertising every week. We continue to push for the necessary improvements. We've come a long way in the last 2 years, 3 years in the park system throughout the county, the infrastructure of Valhalla campus. We've done a lot here. We've caught up. Roads and bridges, we're moving along, and we're continue to move along in that process through the 2022 budget. We're working with the CIC. We did have some issues with COVID, like most industries did. We have some issues with supplies, like most industries have had throughout the United States. It was on CBS this morning. There's a door shortage now throughout the country. So trust me, there are more than door shortages throughout the country. There's everything that we deal with is a shortage. So we have a great staff, and we're working through those issues every day. On the transportation side, as the county executive mentioned, we're moving toward a green environment. We purchase only in the fleet, whether it be hybrid or electric vehicles. Moving forward, we have 6 buses currently on order. One's in the shop already. They'll be on the road by the end of the year. We're also putting in EV charging stations throughout the county, mostly in the county park system. That's in the county budget moving forward. And lastly, we're just going to we're moving forward to a number of other initiatives with the county, and again working with our partners with the CIC and the Construction Industry Council, that is, and also a few other major partners in the state. We're moving this county forward, and that's it.
Thank you. Peter? Thank you, Hugh, and thank you, County Executive. It's nice working with the Department of Public Works and the DEF and the budget and all these various departments. They're on board with what the county executive has put out. And as renewable electric energy, such as wind and hydro and solar, continues to become more available, Westchester County is well positioned to take advantage of it for our transportation and building needs. There's large wind projects that are going up off the coast of Long Island. There's tons of projects, solar projects upstate and coming down to our area. Electric vehicles are more relevant, and adding charging for our fleets, our employees, and our constituents just makes sense. I'm especially pleased to see Hilltop Hanover included here. The Farm and Environmental Center is a real gem for the county. And to demonstrate sustainable and organic farming is very innovative and educational for young and old alike. And at the risk of stepping on the toes of Commissioner Kopicki, I am also excited about the completion of the Methane Recapture project at the Yonkers Wastewater Treatment Plant. And I'll leave it to Vinny to fill you in a little bit more on that. But I just want to thank everybody that's in this room, and especially the county executive, for taking the climate crisis as seriously as we are, and we all really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. I want to thank both Commissioner Grecian and Mr. McCart for their outstanding work. They deal with these issues every day, and you see all the different elements that go into how the county budget is structured from department to department to department. Next, we're going to talk about Westchester County's parks. This proposal includes $4 million to begin the process of reimagining the Westchester County Center. Now, the county center was originally built in the 1930s, right around 1930, late 20s, early 30s. Beautiful Art Deco building. It was state-of-the-art when it originally was opened. It had a major improvement in the early 1980s under County Executive Andrew O'Rourke, and the way that it was modernized at that time brought a new generation of activity into the county center. It is now almost 40 years since that renovation in the 1980s, and in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the center has become a center for vaccinations as a matter of necessity. It has done a brilliant job for us and for our colleagues elsewhere around the Hudson Valley. It is one of the single largest reasons why we have almost a 90% vaccination rate for COVID. But it is at its heart a recreational facility, and this is a perfect opportunity. We'll talk about a similar opportunity with the airport to have a county-wide discussion about what the future of the county center ought to be that involves the people who live in the county, in all corners of the county, from Peekskill to Pelham, as to what the county center can and should be as we go forward. And so $4 million of this budget is allocated for that. We have a combined $45 million in this budget for improvements to the ice casino at Playland and for Playland Amusement Park. Playland has been neglected over an extended period of time for capital. At some points in time, you would think that some just wanted Playland to disappear and go away. We've always viewed Playland as an asset in the same way that we view the Miller House as an asset and the Sprain Ridge Pool as an asset. Every one of these things adds value to Westchester County residents. And so by investing in them, we protect them for the long term, and we wind up in this particular case with a recreational asset. And I would point out the diversity of the park system. We have spent time over the course of the last few months spotlighting investment that we would make in the Tarrytown Sleepy Hollow Lighthouse at Kingsland Point Park, the investment of resources into the Whiteman Estate, which is on the campus of Lenoir Preserve in Yonkers, our commitment of resources into the Mearstead Estate, our commitment of resources into Lasden. We have 6 public golf courses that have had record usage over the last 2 years due to COVID. We have 6 nature centers that have become a refuge for people that needed to be out of their home and yet in a safe environment during the pandemic. It is a multiple mix of facilities that we have in our Parks Department, and it may be the single most visible part of county government to most people. If they don't wind up interacting with the jail or the probation system, they certainly interact with our park system. Our Commissioner for Parks, Recreation, and Conservation is Kathy O'Connor, and she has done a lot with a little, and we hope that with this capital budget we'll be giving her a little bit more to help her do more with this fabulous system. Commissioner Kathy O'Connor.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, County Executive Latimer. We are so excited to continue the renew and rebuild of the county parks facilities. For many, many years they were neglected, and so we've been playing catch up. But this capital budget for 2022 will really, really get us off the ground. Working with the county executive, and this is a county executive that knows our facilities inside and out, and along with the administration and the Board of Legislators. And it's been a pleasure working with people that truly know the facilities and appreciate them and appreciate the staff. So I couldn't ask for more in that respect. We're ready to kick off a couple of cool projects. The county executive already mentioned County Center, which we love, and we have been obviously using it as the vaccination site. But the project going forward for 2022 is to reimagine. It's the design of what we'd like to do going forward. Excuse me. Playland Ice Casino, as the county executive mentioned, there's a design and construction for the new studio rink and also for the rest of the building. Playland itself, structural restoration, construction of the games of skill and arcade buildings, and some of the other food sites. The Glen Island Bridge, this is a complete rehabilitation for 2022. Cranberry Lake Preserve Nature Center, as the county executive mentioned, we have 6 nature centers. They are in dire need of help, and this is a wonderful shot for Cranberry Lake Nature Center. The Mohansick Golf Course Maintenance Facility will be under construction. Pecanico Lake Building site work and demolition for 2022. The Bronx River Pathway reconstruction. This is not adding a new Bronx River Pathway. It is working on what we already have and fixing some of the areas that need help. And then in closing, the equipment acquisition, which we have every year, just to keep going, keep our facilities clean, green, and growing. So again, thank you to everybody in the room. We work closely with the DPW&T, planning, DEF, and all the administration. And we're really excited going forward for 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner O'Connor. Economic development has been an important theme for this county. It always has been, And as I've often said, when I was a child growing up in this county, economic development, as I understood it to be, was Westchester County's ability, along with other resources, to attract major United States corporations leaving Midtown Manhattan or Lower Manhattan and putting their corporate office parks here in Westchester County. When it happened with International Business Machines, the great IBM, it happened with PepsiCo and their family of products, it happened with many other companies, and some of which are here to this day. MasterCard is here. The U.S. operations for Heineken, major operations for Danone North America, you may know them better as Dannon Yogurt and Evian Water, and many other corporations, including the homegrown ones like Regeneron that grew up over the last 20, 30 years. That was the perception of what economic development was: go out and get those kinds of entities to come here with the jobs and the tax dollars they represent. But now we've had to see, in the changing of the economy, a different strategy. The strategy has to be more flexible. It has to reflect the fact that smaller businesses are the dynamic businesses, to take an individual with an idea and the beginnings of a company and grow it into a 5-person company, to a 25-person company, into a larger entity. And for all of those things to happen, we need to have an economic development plan that involves both dealing with larger companies and their ability to expand, and smaller companies and our incentivization for them. And we've had a variety of innovative programs that we credit Bridget Gibbons, who's our Director of Economic Development, and her team, Deb Novick and others, in being able to do. We also look to our Industrial Development Agency for Westchester County, which is headed by our Director of Operations, Joan Mcdonald, to find ways to incentivize certain types of growth that is of the larger nature and essential nature for the county. We're proposing that the activities that we will incent in this budget or directly be involved in this budget would involve 2,000 permanent additional jobs in Westchester County, none of which would be possible without our partners in the development community and our partners in the construction industry and the labor community. So Joan Mcdonald, who is our Director of Operations, as well as head of the IDA, is the key point person in this area. And Joan, we'd like you to just share a couple of your thoughts in this budget.
Thank you, County Executive. Good morning, everybody. I want to pick up a few of the themes that some of the people who spoke before me mentioned. First and foremost, when you think of economic development and the role government plays in business development, and not only luring and encouraging companies to come here, but maintaining those companies, large and small, as the county executive said, to remain here. And first and foremost, one of the things that companies look at is our credit rating and how the county handles its finances. And as Larry Sewell, our budget director, mentioned, under the county executive's leadership, our bond rating has improved, and the message we send to businesses and residents alike is we are here and we are stable. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, is the area of resiliency. And we felt that so close and so near just a little over 6 weeks ago, when Ida hit us with the ravages that we hadn't felt in a very long time. So what the business community looks for is, how do we make investments in our capital assets to make sure that they are resilient for what we know to be, a 50-year storm, a 100-year storm, 500-year storm, which now happens every other year. So we are, under Commissioner Grecian and Commissioner Kopicki's leadership, we are looking at ways to increase that resiliency so that those investments we make continue to endure. And lastly, the area of workforce development. The county executive mentioned Bridget Gibbons, our Director of Economic Development. Today, she and our Director of Tourism are at a job fair where we are helping the tourism committee and tourism community and hospitality community gain workforce for them. But on the construction side, with this capital program and other investments coming from the federal government, we clearly need a qualified workforce. And we work closely with the building trades to make sure that we have a qualified, trained workforce to put into all of these jobs and make sure that these investments are made to ensure our future. So those are the some of the three areas that the business community looks at when they look to see what the county is doing when it comes to capital investments. So it's exciting. As Commissioner O'Connor said, it's an exciting time. We've got some great projects in the works, great projects already completed under the county executive's direction, which it's always great to do groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings. That's what we all love going to. So with that, I will turn it back to the county executive.
Thank you very much, Joan Mcdonald, our Director of Operations. And may I just say that, I've learned over the years that success comes from having capable, intelligent people take on responsibilities. And it's the responsibility of the chief executive of any entity to find and persuade those talented people to put their energies on behalf of whatever the entity is that you're responsible for. Joan Mcdonald has already served as a state-level commissioner in the state of Connecticut for economic development under Governor Jody Rell, and as state commissioner of the Department of Transportation, a large, complicated department of state government that has twice as number of employees in that one department as all of Westchester County's government. So the fact that she has put her time and energy and talent to the benefit of Westchester County, I personally deeply appreciate, and I think the benefit is being seen across Westchester County, whether you understand to attach your name to this or the name of our Deputy Director of Operations, Emily Saltzman, the aforementioned Blanca Lopez, who's our Assistant Director of Operations, and her predecessor in that position, who's now our Deputy Commissioner of Emergency Services, Susan Spear, who's also performed brilliantly in these areas. You're seeing the quality of our commissionerships and our various directors, and Joan is chief among those, and I'm grateful for her public service. Next, we'll talk about environmental facilities, which is a function that's absolutely essential and a function that is not always the dinner time topic. Now, we tend to use acronyms like DEF and DES, but environmental facilities, which is the proper name for DEF, which you hear us referred to, has a number of different functions. The most public function that you may see is when we have household cleanup days, which we have recently reinstituted last couple of years at FDR in Yorktown, at the Materials Recovery Facility in Yonkers, and we also have at Playland Park. We space them out over the course of the year where people can bring the kinds of materials to dispose of that you can't dispose of in the normal garbage, electronics and other such things, chemicals and so forth. That's a public face of DEF. A public face of DEF is the removal of sewage from our homes and from other locations so that they're properly treated before they're discharged, and they're discharged into bodies of water that we want to keep clean because of our environmental priorities. The Hudson River and the Long Island Sound, there are 7 sewer treatment plants, and as part of our efforts covering a significant portion, well over 50% of the sewage generated in Westchester County. This department is also responsible for the collection and disposal of recyclable products. We have material recovery facilities that take glass, plastic, metal, cardboard, and bring them to a proper means of disposal, in some cases with the market value, in some cases at least to be reused, if not sold for benefit. And this is a complicated area of functioning, and this is an area during COVID that could not be shut down. Whatever it took to keep a sewer treatment plant running, it has to keep going. Vincent Kopicki has been with the county government as a commissioner of both that department and Department of Public Works and Transportation in the past. He is specifically head of environmental facilities today, and in this budget, what we have provided for is money that we think will be very helpful for 2 of our wastewater recovery facilities. We use the acronym of sewer treatment plants. It's actually wastewater treatment plants. We have 7 of them. There's money in this budget, $37.5 million in capital for the Mamaroneck wastewater treatment plant located right at Harbor Island, right off of US 1. You'll see it when you go down the Boston Post Road. Beautiful building. Looks like it's a college campus. It isn't. But what we intend to do in that facility with this expansion of money is improvements that will include nitrogen removal and phosphorus removal to protect the Long Island Sound, emergency power systems, and odor control. And at Yonkers, where we have by far the largest of our wastewater treatment plants located right in the Ludlow section, the southwest section of Yonkers, $22.6 million for additional odor control measures, the aforementioned completion of the methane recapture project that will allow the facility to generate approximately 70% of its energy needs by recapturing the methane gas that is a byproduct of the sewer treatment process. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Vincent Kopicki. I know he doesn't love being in public speaking settings, but he knows so much more about this than I do, and I'm very happy that both he's commissioner and that he can also explain in a little greater detail what our plans are. Commissioner Kopicki.
Thank you very much, County Executive. As the County Executive mentioned, we have our mission statement basically is the solid waste side, wastewater side, and the water side to protect the water courses, to provide proper waste stream reduction and recycling, and to protect the health and safety and welfare of the public. And in order to do this, we are constantly repairing, maintaining, and upgrading our facilities, and always looking for new technology to meet or exceed our recycling and treatment level goals. Perfect example, as we had talked about earlier, was the anaerobic digester gas engines at the Yonkers plant, which we have existing diesel fuel engines now. These new engines are dual fuel, operating on natural gas and digester gas. So hopefully, when this project is completed, almost all of our digester gas will be used to power the plant. Another project that we're looking at on the solid waste side is to study our transfer stations and our material recovery facility to look at new technologies. We're always looking for the latest and greatest technology to provide better recycling. We're going to look at our operations department to make some changes to recycle glass more efficiently. So that's the theme of our department. We're always looking for new technologies to increase our treatment levels, to provide more efficient operations. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank County Executive Latimer, Deputy County Executive Jenkins, Director of Operations Mcdonald, and the Board of Legislators for working with our department to make these projects happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kopicki. If the press has any questions about digester gas, we're going to ask the Commissioner to come back up and handle those questions. I think I missed the course in grad school on that topic. But thank you for your professionalism, Vince. We deeply appreciate it. Next, we want to talk about the Westchester County Airport. During the course of the 4 years of this administration, we have been committed to managing the Westchester County Airport as a transportation facility that has a less amount of impact on the people who live in proximity to it. We have not expanded Westchester County Airport one iota. There's been no efforts to try to expand using capital resources so that we can have more capacity. In fact, we rely on the restrictions of use of the airport that came from the mid-1980s settlement of a lawsuit that limits the amount of commercial flights that can be housed at gates, and also the number of passengers that can go through within a half an hour at any single point in time, to make sure that we do not have an expansion of the commercial side of the airport. And we're in court right now dealing with our prerogative as a government to decide whether or not we will authorize any additional general aviation facilities. We believe we have that authority, and that by retaining that authority, we have the right then to, where we can, control the operation of the airport. That being said, that there's $28 million in new appropriations within this budget to deal with essential services there, things such as fire suppression. In case we have a fire situation, we're trying to protect the health and safety of all of our employees and our patrons at the facility. I'm bringing back Commissioner Hugh Grecian to address this briefly, since it falls within the transportation component of county government, which is under his authority as Commissioner of DPWT. Commissioner Grecian.
Yeah, good morning again. First, I'll talk about some of the projects we're completing that we had authorized in last year's capital budget and the year before. We're improving the stormwater systems out there on a daily basis. We're finishing up some wetlands restoration. We're also expanding the stormwater basins for flood control, and we're also finishing up the fluid de-icing. When you de-ice a plane, there's a collection system out there that's actually now, it's going to actually be metered into the Blind Brook sewage treatment plant. But that whole area where you de-ice a plane, which is very critical, is now is going to be captured, and we're in the final phases of that as we speak. So this year we're going to concentrate on the water system, and that's what the $28 million appropriation that the county executive had mentioned earlier. So it's on the west side of the airport, which is on the terminal side, and that whole side is frankly the water supply system for the last 20, 25 years has been deficient ever since, almost since when the existing terminal went in. So it's for fire suppression, but also redundancy. There has been times out there where they've lost water, where the water main break with Westchester Joint Waterworks, something like that. Day to day, it's certainly operational, but you always want redundancy in any water system, and this $28 million will do that. It will help the fire suppression systems up to code, and moving forward. We always at the airport, we're always concerned with the environment. We're always doing the best technologies out there. We also do any electric vehicles that we can use. We're also implementing at the airport the tugs that move your plane. That's what they call them. They're electric. So we're always looking to improve the environmental conditions. We're looking at solar. We're looking at a bunch of things and working with the FBOs up there, the people that run the private industry. We're also keeping them to the highest standards too, that they'll also, be a good neighbor. Thank you.
Hopefully you have some flavor of what is in this capital budget as we prepare to submit it to the Board of Legislators and the various commissioners who each spoke to different elements of this, and the diversity going from what we're doing at the airport to what we're doing in terms of affordable housing, to what we're doing in terms of wastewater treatment plants, to what we're doing in terms of our parks, all the different diversities that go into this capital budget. The capital budget will be posted online, and I recognize that it's a detailed document. The vast majority of people will probably not find the time to go through it in detail, but for transparency's sake, it will be there for your scrutiny, where you can look at things that are specific or things that are generic. I want to point out that within the creation of this budget, in which Joan Mcdonald, as Director of Operations, serves as a point person along with our budget department individuals and the senior management, Ken Jenkins and myself. We have received all types of input from department heads about these different programs and from the Board of Legislators. I want to credit Legislator Colin Smith of Peekskill. He requested the rehabilitation of East Main Street in Peekskill from Broad Street to Division Street. That is a road project, and we have roads and bridges projects in this budget that has been included in this budget. Legislator Ruth Walter from Bronxville and North Yonkers requested funding rehabilitation of Central Park Avenue near the Bronx-Westchester County line and the New York State Thruway Bridge. We have included that in this capital budget. The majority leader of the legislature, Mary Jane Shimsky, requested funding for the reconstruction of the Bronx River Pathway from Kensico Dam down to Green Acres Avenue, Crane Road in the Scarsdale area, and that was included in this budget. Legislator Vedat Gashi of Yorktown requested funding for repairs to building and infrastructure at Hilltop Hanover, which we've just indicated is in the budget. So this is an example of members of the legislature who will now sit to review the budget that had input and desire to see certain things happen in their respective districts, and we've been able to include those things in this budget, and we think that's very important. I'd like to ask our Deputy County Executive, Ken Jenkins, now to join us. Ken, aside from his current responsibilities for the last 4 years as Deputy County Executive, the 1 and 1A of our partnership in running the county. Ken has served as a county legislator for 11 years. He served as chairman of the Board of Legislators within the last 10 years. I served in that capacity 20 years ago, and I'd like Ken to go over now the process of what happens with this budget for review and ultimately adoption. Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins.
Thank you, County Executive. And certainly as the leadership of the county executive right from the very beginning, from January 1st, 2018, to be able to look at the process and make some significant modifications that allow the kind of scope and work that happens in the presentation of this particular county capital budget. That process started with a joint partnership in legislation right from the very beginning to have Assemblyman Pretlow, who is the leader of our delegation for the state delegation, as well as the majority leader of the New York State Senate, who happens to be a Westchester resident, is Andrea Stewart Cousins, to be able to lift that bond cap. That bond cap lifting was able, as the county executive pointed out earlier, and Larry Soul echoed as well, to stop the projects from being broken up. Because again, when it was established, $10 million was a lot of money, but that is not the case in 2021. And that was extremely helpful for us to be able to move forward with that. The second component of that was the ability that Joan Mcdonald, as county executive, talked about with economic development and all the experience from Department of Transportation and all the state experience that she had as well, to be able to make some changes and present to the Board of Legislators the bundling of those projects, which allowed us to be able to go to the Construction Industry Council, get those projects out so that the roads and bridges and those projects that need the work to happen during the construction season to be hitting the road and actually getting done. So that part of the process was because of the county executive's vision and leadership that helped us to get to that particular point. As far as the charter is concerned, at this point in time, the information is going through the entire year. It just doesn't start in September. It is a continual process where the departments create things under a capital projects committee that meets in May and then sends those projects to our planning board and goes through that particular process till we get to today. And now, as the county executive said, the process begins, handing over to the Board of Legislators and having that additional public input, which everyone should make sure to take advantage of to make sure their voices are heard on these very, very important projects for the people of Westchester. Thank you, County Executive.
And as I thanked Joan Mcdonald, let me thank Ken Jenkins for his leadership day by day by day in the governance of this county. He's been a tremendous partner, and the fact that we have some shared experiences in the Board of Legislators and separate but parallel experiences in corporate life has made a tremendous advantage for us in trying to govern. Ken, thank you for your leadership in all of this. So the next thing I'm going to do is invite the chairman of the Board of Legislators, the Honorable Ben Boykin, to come up and receive the budget as proposed. Now, this is the first of two installments. We'll be back a month from now with an equally large book, which will carry the operating and special districts budget. Ben, I've been on the other end of this handoff, and I must tell you, this is the happier end to be on, handing it over to you and our colleagues to review. And so certainly with this transition, we would love for you to say anything you'd like to say. Congratulations, this operating budget is yours, capital budget to review. Mr. Chairman.
Yes. I think it's morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, County Executive Latimer, to your executive team, to the commissioners that are here, and others. First of all, let me start from a macro standpoint. 4 years ago, you took office on December 31st, be 4 years ago, and I became chair of the board. And we had a shared vision to right the county's financial ship. That means that we eliminated the structural deficits and started rebuilding the county's reserve funds, the rainy day funds, as our budget director, Larry Soul, spoke about earlier today. But we also had a mission to do this without increasing the county's property tax burden, without cutting the essential services, and while continuing to invest in Westchester's future by rebuilding our infrastructure. And you've heard the commissioners today to talk about what we're doing at the airport. We talk about what we're doing with environmental services, what we're doing with affordable housing, and all such areas in the county. If you listen careful, you understand the magnitude to which the county is involved in this county and what we do, whether it's recreation, which proved so important during the pandemic and will continue to be very important. We couldn't foresee COVID-19, but we dealt with it, we're still dealing with it, and we still have to continue to be vigilant. But through your leadership, through the creativity and ingenuity of the budget director and your staff, And with the hard work of our county legislators, we have come really a long ways. We've removed unsustainable one-shot revenues from our budgets. We've added tens of millions of dollars to our reserves. We've cut the property tax levy, and I heard correctly that I may be getting an operating budget that the board is going to review next month that will continue to cut the property tax levy. And we've responded to the pandemic when people turn to government for help by providing the services that are essential to the people of Westchester County. And now today, I receive on behalf of the Board of Legislators the 2022 capital budget. In recent capital budgets, we've taken advantage of low interest rates. And Larry Soul mentioned that, our bond rating did take a one-knot hit, but in the capital markets, if you are strong and investors perceive that you are still a very good credit worthiness, we trade very much still like a AAA, and I wanted to make sure of that as we look into the marketplace. But our capital budgets have been there to improve our parks, to rebuild our roads, to modernize our wastewater treatment plants, to invest in new technology, to help to provide affordable housing so that seniors and others and the working families can stay in this community and come to this community, because businesses need people to come and stay and be part of this community. And we need to build a cleaner and greener future, which we've talked about that this capital budget will do. The board will begin consideration of the 2020 capital budget proposals on Tuesday, October 19th, in our Budget and Appropriations Committee, chaired by Legislator Catherine Borgia, with the assistance of Budget Committee Coordinator Ala Rasitana, who is with us this morning. As you know, she calls you, gets you lined up for all those meetings. So on behalf of myself and all members of the Board of Legislators and the board staff, I want to thank you and let you know that for the people of Westchester County, we will conduct a thorough due diligence with a laser focus on both fiscal responsibility and the goal we still share of building an even brighter and better future for the people of Westchester County. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Ben Boykin, who now has the capital budget for proposal for Westchester County. And in a little less than a month, we'll be back here and we'll give you another big book, which will be the operating budget, which is still subject to some input that we're going to have public input coming up in the next week and a half, and then certainly the dialogue that we're going to have on an ongoing basis over the next few weeks. I want to open it up for any press questions if we have some. I'll try to address them. What I would invite the press to do, if there are more detailed questions, perhaps this format is not the best format. We'll be happy to check together with commissioners who can talk in greater detail. I'm happy to talk in an overview fashion. Our Director of Communications, Catherine Chaffee, and she's ably assisted here this morning by our full communications team. Any questions that we have to address?
Yes, we have two questions from David Proper from the Journal News. He asks, the first one, what exactly is the $4 million going towards regarding the county center?
Well, this is part of an analysis to look at various assessment of what the physical conditions of the county center are. As I think people understand, when we turned the county center over to the state for reconfiguration, it was originally reconfigured into a hospital setting with a number of hospital rooms. Now, what we had outside of the county center, which has now been deconstructed, was 54 hospital rooms that looked just like a hospital room, capacity for ICU usage, and we have 56 rooms like that constructed inside on the main floor, where once we saw basketball or in years past boxing and so forth. So there has to be a full physical assessment of the county center in all of its entirety, what the impact is on both the electrical, the water capacity, structural capacity of all of these things. And that assessment also comes with getting strategic options of how this building could be structurally reused so that the decision makers, which include the Board of Legislators and the people of Westchester County, will know what the physical needs to restore the center is and, excuse me, what the implications would be if we moved in different directions. There will probably be a press conference on that topic alone once the budget is adopted, and we'll see what modifications may be made to an allocation of money. The capital budget allocates a certain amount of money and a category of spending, and then the details will follow the approval of that at whatever amount is approved.
Second question, which is also the last question we have so far. Can you see a scenario where the county center is no longer used for recreation and events?
Well, anything can be conceived. So it's impossible to say, no, I can't conceive of some possible usage for it. But I think we have shown as an administration a great respect for tradition and a great respect for the accomplishments of prior administrations, particularly those that go back 75, 100 years. That is what was implicit in our actions at Playland. That was what was implicit in the way we look at improvements to the Bronx River Parkway, both the pathway and the roadway itself. So I think the tradition of why the county center was created is the bedrock of how we look at the county center. But we have to look at it in light of the 21st century. At the very least, we know that we don't have the kind of technological connections in a facility like that we would need to have to be a modern 21st century facility, even if our envisionment was as an exhibit hall and a convention facility in usage. And I think we also have the responsibility to look at the layout and determine not just the main floor, which most people are familiar with, which we use as the arena, but also the little theater, the side rooms, the basement of it, and how those facilities are used and how could they be used in the future. So conceiving it as something completely different, maybe in the general review of things, but I think we begin with the historical use of the building and how do we make that historical use be modernized for the 21st century. But that includes identifying the markets. This is where my past business experience comes into place. What are the markets that would use that facility under certain circumstances? And that also requires us, as anyone would in what I used to do professionally, doing a marketing plan to look at other facilities that are out there and how are they competitively used. We've lost some major hotels in this county. We may see a major casino be developed in this county. Those are factors that we'd have to consider as we have this discussion. And as I've said to David Proper, in this case from LoHUD, this is part of a countywide discussion, not just a discussion on the 9th floor or the 8th and 9th floor. I would expect we would have forums around the county where we would invite people to come and talk about it. And there'll be a fair bit of reminiscing, the people who've used it, seen it used in the past, but also a certain amount of visioning for the future. Okay, very good. I'm going to create some closing comments. I know this is a long presentation. I wanted you to have the benefit of the conversation of this executive team, the commissioners who are here today. There are other commissioners who aren't present today who also have elements within this capital budget. And Mr. Chairman, all of the commissioners, all of the senior management team are at the disposal of the Board of Legislators as you see fit. Once again, Ali Restiano is with us here today, and she will be calling you. And when she calls, you will answer the call. And we will certainly give you the benefit not only of our commissioners, but people up and down the line of these departments who will also have greater knowledge and detail to try to give the board every input that they require. As I've mentioned before, as Ken Jenkins so ably pointed out, in November, on about November 10th, we will submit the operating budget and the special districts budgets as well. And then those plus this will create the full document for review. And I would invite you to check with the Board of Legislators website. They have a website. They will announce dates for mini hearings, and then the formal hearing. There's something called Adds Day, in which they will add spending to the budget for further consideration before they delete and have a final adopted budget. The budget must be balanced. The revenues in the budget must meet the expenditures in the budget. Unlike perhaps the federal government, we cannot print money, therefore we can't have an unbalanced budget, and the budget will be reviewed by the state controller and certified as properly balanced. So it's not just our opinion of what's balanced, but their opinion as well. And we will look at all of those revenue streams as well as the expenditure streams, this being an important part, but not the only one. I would just make some general closing comments to those of you who have had the fortitude to watch this all the way through. I doubt people will just skim through just to catch pieces of it, but nonetheless, there is a time in public affairs for symbolism. Symbolism has its place. When we honor those who died on 9/11. When we graduate a class of correction officers, when we recognize people who have done volunteer work over and above, as we did just last week, those are symbolic moments where the government stops the day-to-day operation, and we recognize that there are things that are done that mean something of value to the society. We did that yesterday in recognizing, just by our signage, the African American cemetery at Greenwood Union Cemetery. But there's also a time in public affairs where the substance of public affairs must matter. We as a society have been so accustomed to appeals to ideology and to debates over philosophy that we think sometimes government is merely an arena for us to work out our philosophical and ideological battles. And truth, objective truth, and facts get pushed to the side as we support those things that we believe in. Government is not simply a clash of ideologies. Government has to provide certain concrete services, programs, and activities that can best be provided by the society acting through the government. We as individuals are responsible, in the main, for the health and welfare of ourselves and our families. We take on that obligation as adults when we have children. We take on that obligation just as individuals as we perform our life. Our responsibility to find gainful employment, our responsibility to provide food on the table for the people in our family. But individuals can't fix a public bridge that you need to drive over to get to that employment. We cannot, as individuals, provide the necessary services for transportation models and treatment of sewage. This is why society organizes itself in governments. And in every form of government known to mankind, there has been some function to accomplish these tasks. Now, throughout the history of the world, it's really been done in a way in which singular authority is held by force of power. It may be through a hereditary monarch. It might be through a military junta. It might be through an overarching religious leader. It might be through any combination of coups and physical force that exerts the authority over people that some government has. But for the last 243 years, this continent has determined that democracy, citizen involvement in governance, is the preferred way to operate, making these decisions. And that's why I talk about using government as a place to clash in ideology as being a sideshow, when the real reason for government to exist is to provide a structure for the society so that the individual can prosper. Now, this is not the national government. I say this all the time. It's not the state government. This is a county government. We have very defined functions. We work as closely as we can with the local municipal governments. We, too, are a local government. We're a regional local government. And where the local government provides recreation in your neighborhood with playgrounds and best pocket parks, we provide regional services, because not every community has a nature center. Not every community has a public golf course. We provide those things on a regional basis. Not every community can treat its sewerage within the context of its physical topography. We provide that as a regional government. And sometimes these tasks are ignored. They're not as sexy as the issues that you see on television being debated on this channel or that channel. But this is the essential element of providing a service and what government is tasked to do. This is what the Founding Fathers intended when they decided to create a democracy, as Franklin said, if you can keep it. And the keeping of the democracy is not just how we handle ourselves in a political climate, but it's how we handle ourselves in governing, that we care enough to provide these services effectively and efficiently, and that we shut down the rhetoric and we focus on the results. And those results do not have a political party attached to them. I'm proud to say in this administration, many of the leaders of this administration preceded my administration. And when I came into office, I sought out people with the quality of a Ken Jenkins and a Joan Mcdonald to join us, but I believe I had the presence of mind to maintain people like Larry Sewell and Vincent Kapicki, who served this county well already, and to make sure they continue to serve us going forward. That is when you put substance ahead of symbolism. This budget and the budget to follow is about substance. I'm perfectly prepared to discuss with the press or members of the public on any of my travels I'm happy to debate this at any point in time that anybody would prefer to debate on it. And there's a legitimate element of debate in democracy if you choose to debate it. But if you don't choose to debate it, it doesn't mean you can erase that which is the substance of government. So if you want to go through this capital project list, if you want to go through this budget, I welcome you to do that. And when we submit the operating budget, I welcome you to go through that. I welcome you to participate in the forums that the executive branch is going to have, and then even more importantly, the public hearings and public meetings that the legislature is going to have. And I'd like you to be engaged. You certainly have every right to know what the tax impact will be, but you ought to know what the policy impact would be. Because I assure you, as Franklin once said, the only way that this is a democracy is if we keep it. And the only way we keep it is by understanding that the privileges of citizenship come with the responsibilities of citizenship. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for watching. I bid you a good day. Be safe, and we'll communicate with you again soon. Thank you all.